an entire expedition to recover the hidden gold. I mean, it gets into, amazing amounts of gold treasure, cryptozoology. Bigfoot was involved, cryptozoological types of characters have been described for many years there. Mm-hmm. It devolves into this morass of you really can't put your finger on anything definitive. You just have a bunch of really cool stories that has some historical research involved. In other words, the guy that guided the French expedition that came to recover the gold from the original expedition, Juan Martinez, when the recovery crew came in the, I think, 1770s or late 1760s, they were all massacred by the Ute Indians, and he was the only one to be able to escape with his life. He went back to down to Santa Fe, and first to Taos and to Santa Fe, and he was the first person put on trial for murder in the new Mexican territory, the Spanish territory of New Mexico. And if you look, anybody out there that wants to challenge me on this, if you look for the first murder trial in the territory of New Mexico as administered by the Spanish, you will find Juan Martinez, the guide to the recovery team that was going back. This French family went back to get the gold. He was put on trial for murder because he was able to escape with his life. I mean, the story goes on and on. We have America's most little known, and it should be the most notorious serial killer, comes from the San Luis Valley. Felipe Espinosa. This is before Jack the Ripper. We're going back, in the late 1870s, early 1880s. He was given a vision by the Virgin Mary as he, was in.
Well, we'll be right back, Chris, and you can finish that thought. And that's not the only serial killer that's come from the San Luis Valley. There's also Richard White from the last decade. So certainly there's been some strange things in this mysterious valley. We'll be back with our guest, Christopher Brien, after this. Stay with us. And welcome to Hour 2 of Outside the Box with our very special guest, Christopher O'Brien, author of Enter the Valley, The Mysterious Valley, and Stalking the Trickster. Christopher, when I got here, I heard about the legends and some of these Indian wars, some of them that were fueled by the Spanish and the treaties that they had with the Utes. It reminded me a lot of the movie and the book, which I just read a couple weeks ago, Dances with Wolves, where in the book Dances with Wolves, it's not the Sioux, it's the Comanche. So when I think about some of those scenes in the movie Dances with Wolves, the Pawnee, the war parties of the Pawnee attacking the Sioux, the Comanche. Yeah, it sounds a lot like some of the stories that exist right here in the San Luis Valley.
There were quite a number of Plains Indian tribes that used to travel west, during the summer into the warmer months and hunt. Some of the last remaining buffalo herds were found there because they were protected by the environment, by the geography. There's a possibility that some of the paleo animals, mastodons, for instance, may have survived there longer than out in the plains. I investigated one report of a rancher that discovered a fully articulated dinosaur skeleton that he found in situ that he turned over to the Denver Museum of Natural History, and they totally said, hey, you never sent us anything. That's alluvial plain sediment. There's no way that a dinosaur, could have been there 1 million years ago. You must have been wrong. And he said, well, I sent you a skeleton. They said, what skeleton? So it's a very mysterious place. Native Americans, early European incursions into the area up the Rio Grande Valley the French coming from Kansas. It's just it's a wonderful melting pot of, exploration, mystery, treasure legends, all sorts of like really cool stuff. And that's why I wrote, my first 3 books, because I was able just, as an average guy, to go and research and go to libraries. This is all pre-internet, of course, and do the heavy lifting in terms of really coming up with some sort of traditional knowledge that we could ascribe to legends or myths or, urban legends, whatever. But we do have a body of documented evidence that does suggest that this is a very bizarre place. And I've been gone for, over 10 years, allowing the place to percolate on its own without a lot of media attention, without a lot of, front loading going on. And, the place still dazzles me. It defies description. The flying humanoid reports that have been going on in the last 2 years on the west side of the middle part of the valley.
Okay, flying humanoid. I mean, I thought that's new to me. I mean, Chris, at what point did you start investigating the strangeness going on in the skies? Because someone can look at this and interpret this different ways. There's a lot of different bases. It's not just Denver. There's also different theories. There might be some sort of an underground base that runs from Blanca all the way to Denver. We don't know that, but there's a lot of people that believe that could be what's taking place. Well, where do your investigations start with first of all, before we get to cattle mutilations, the UFO phenomena that seems to be over time, not just recent years, even during the time of Indians, very active in this area?
Well, like I said, the first entry into my database is in the fall of 1777, when the territorial governor of New Mexico, Juan Bautista de Anza, chased Comanche chief Cuena Verde, Greenhorn, up into the San Luis Valley. Tried to track him down and kill him, basically. And on the return of their trip, in his diary, he noted, as I talked about before, strange lights fleeting around, spinning around the tops of the mountains, and a strange low-pitched vibration that seemed to be coming from the mountain underground. That's the first kind of official, undocumented entry into my database. But, going all the way back to 1777, I mean, come on, the United States literally had been established a year before that. If you go down through history, some of the stories, legends, reports, rumors, the things that for an anthropologist or a sociologist are very interesting, to a hard-boiled, nuts and bolts scientist, it's all just rumor and stories and urban legends and that sort of thing. After you have so many of these things piling up, when you're going back and researching through, databases and through newspaper archives and that sort of thing, you really start to get the feeling that, even if most of this stuff isn't true, if just some of it is true, then we have a very interesting petri dish of potential exploration and the revealing of some sort of, exalted, maybe, at the very least, existential knowledge. I mean, there's, I wouldn't know where to begin, Alex. It's a 2-hour radio program. We're talking about 20 years of research here. So I really wouldn't know where to begin. The Native American tradition, to me, says that all the modern stuff has some sort of basis in reality. If you have an oral tradition that establishes a place as being sacred and strange with weird stuff going on, anything that's happened in the last 50 or 60 years that's been documented by the media, by law enforcement, by the government, it gives it more gravitas. It gives it more legitimacy. And the San Luis Valley is just one place that can tout this. You know, the Black Hills of South Dakota, areas around Lassen, Mount Shasta, the Hudson River Valley. I mean, I could go on and, list out a bunch of places that have the same sort of equation or parameters going on. But what's important to me is if there's a tradition of sacredness and a tradition of unexplained phenomena going on that can be documented now in the modern age, videotapes, lab reports, police, crime, in some cases, reports, then it's worthy of investigation. And that's why I've been fixated on, in a quiet manner, documenting the stuff that's going on there. Mm-hmm. So welcome to Ground Zero, dude.
There's definitely an energy to this place that even I can't deny. And I've talked with some open-minded friends that I've met in the Valley about how potentially the energy that's so strong here might affect different people in different ways based on the level of their consciousness or what they focus on. So we have stories of Indian warriors coming to the San Luis Valley for their vision quests, but we also have these stories about serial killers. And as I mentioned in the last break, people can Google confess serial killer sentenced to life in prison. And that is the serial killer from the last decade, Richard White. It makes me wonder if there's an energy in the Valley, and there are people at different levels of sensitivity, but people have told me there's something about the area that we're in that affects some people in a certain way, while others will react a different way. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, it's one extreme to another. Felipe Espinosa, I think, is a classic example of someone who went through a very traumatic experience. I mean, he was down in Veracruz in the 1820s when Winfield Scott and the U.S. Navy bombarded Veracruz, from ships, and they would fire their cannons and killed, hundreds and hundreds of civilians living in Veracruz, including 6 members of Felipe Norio Espososa's family. And he had nobody left in his family in Mexico, and his relatives up in Conejos County, or the town of Conejos in the San Luis Valley, had him shipped up there, and they began to raise him. And all through the 1850s, 1860s, he was your average guy, but he had, according to my research, a vision, actually, at the oldest church in Colorado, in Conejos, Colorado. He had a vision that said that he needed to avenge the deaths of all 6 of his family members from that bombardment of Veracruz, and he needed to kill 100 gringos for every family member that had been slain. So we're talking 600 people. Somehow he was able to convince his uncle and his cousin that his vision was divine. And for about a 6-7 month period, they started bushwhacking white people in southern Colorado. We know they got at least 40 or